Young.
I move the question be now put.
Darian Fenton.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to have a call on part one of the asset sales bill. And I particularly want to support amendments 18, 19, 20 and 21 in the names of various names of my colleagues, which will remove these assets from the bill. And we are totally opposed to them being included in this bill. In fact, we're totally opposed to the bill. As many of my colleagues have said, there's a number of problems with part one. One is removal of access to the Ombudsman and the Official Information Act. And the other one, as my colleague Chris Farter was talking about, was the social responsibility clause, but also the requirements to be a good employer will no longer have to be met by any person, any employer that buys these assets, and the government will have no responsibility. And let's talk about what the responsibilities of a good employer actually means. First of all, it means that there has to be good and safe working conditions. Gone, ditched from this bill. Well, Toh Henry, perhaps you should read the bill. Perhaps the member doesn't understand exactly what his member is doing. Or the removal of those companies from the State-Owned Enterprises Act means that the employers no longer have to be good employers. It will also remove the Equal Opportunities Employment Program, the impartial selection of suitably qualified persons, and give opportunities for the enhancement of the abilities of these individual employees. I just want to go back a little bit, Mr Chair, if I can, and talk about why these assets were built in the first place. They were not built by private corporations and private companies. The state actually developed the electricity companies, in actual fact the state coal mines as well, because of the inability of the private sector to actually be able to provide low-cost electricity for residential consumers and to support the industry. And as my colleagues have said, electricity is a fundamental and basic right. To be able to, it's a basic right to be able to have electricity in your home, and it's essential for householders. And its price is a significant factor in New Zealand's health and their living standards. These assets that we're talking about in clause part one, Genesis Power, Meridian Energy, Mighty River Power, Solid Energy. These are assets that were not only bought and paid for by our forebears, but they were built by our forebears. They were built and paid for by the sweat and hard work of New Zealanders who thought they were going to be preserved for their children and grandchildren. But the assets on this, in this bill on the chopping block are dams, wind farms, mines, they are on the chopping block, absolutely on the chopping block. And it's very interesting when you look at some of the Waitaki Dam, for example, is described as the birthplace of the world's first social welfare system. And Manapuri Dam is also described as the birthplace of, according to Meridian, of our environmental awareness. Now, let's put, Mr Chair, that took 1,800 workers to build that, and it was a huge job, 1,800 workers to do that, and lots of them died. And it's very interesting here because I dug out the other day a little book here, a little book. It's the Union book. It's called the Determination Order for the New Zealand Workers Industrial Union of Workers. What's really interesting, apart from the fact this is 1960s and 1970s industrial relations where these workers actually got penal rates, but they had to have allowances for a whole range of things. They lived in camps, like I hear they're proposing that the workers of Christchurch, the construction of workers of Christchurch, they lived in camps, and they had to have things like separation allowances, married people because they were separated from their family, and some of the things that they had to be paid allowances for are horrific when you read them. When you look at the things that they were paid allowances for under this award, and it gives you some idea of what those builders, the people that constructed our dams in our mines, actually went through. And of course, you know, they got allowances for things like poisons. They got allowance. They were given allowance for someone actually mixing and applying poisonous spray. They got that. Mr. Chair.
Honourable Tau Hinare.
Mr. Chair, I move that the rest of the Honourable
Honourable Parakura Horomia.